Um, because of time, we'll just go to the last hymn, hymn 339. This is all. May all the glory and praise be unto his holy name.
我们请一起同心默祷。
Let's pray in silence.
我们奉主耶稣圣名，我们继续安息圣日下午的聚会。
In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, we begin our Sabbath afternoon service.
我们一起来唱赞美诗90首。
Let's sing hymn number 90.
有时遇见苦。
Please be seated.
我们在灵恩会的时候当时有2位同龄做见证。
During our spiritual convocation, we had two members testify,
但是当时只安排了1节的见证会。
and we only allotted one session for testimony.
那难免会有遗珠之憾没有办法这个把所蒙的恩典能够彻底的来见证出来。
So there is never abundance of time for the blessings and grace of God to be testified.
所以下午我们特别又请这个蔡玉弟兄来做见证。
So this afternoon we have asked Brother Tsai Yu to testify.
那这一次就能够把从神那边来的恩典这个彻底的完全的来跟我们弟兄姐妹分享。
So at this time he can thoroughly and boldly testify of the grace and blessing from God.
那我们知道蔡弟兄他们一家人现在是在外州。
We know that Brother Tsai and his family come from out of state.
他们也正在考虑要就近我们芝加哥教会那我们也为他们来祷告。
They are also in the process of trying to relocate, so we will keep them in our prayer.
盼望他们一家人能够在我们芝加哥能够有好的工作。
We hope that they will be able to find a a good job in the Chicago area.
那将来啊就能够就近我们芝加哥教会来聚会、来敬拜、来服侍。
So that in the future they can worship and serve with us here in the Chicago church.
我们也帮他们一家人来祷告。
So we will also keep their family in our prayers.
那我们现在我们就为等一下的见证会我们一起祷告，求神来带领。
So now we will kneel down and pray and ask the Lord to guide our testimony session.
我们一起同心跪下祷告。
Let us pray.
奉主耶稣圣名祷告。哈利路亚啦啦啦啦啦啦啦 好，那我们现在我们就请蔡玉弟兄来为主做见证。
So now we invite Brother Tsaier to testify for us.
感谢主啊！
Thank the Lord.
奉主耶稣基督圣名做见证。
In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, I testify.
我叫蔡玉，
My name is Tsaier.
莉迪亚是我的女儿，
Lydia is my daughter.
就是刚才那个哭得最凶的那个。就是刚才哭得最凶、最大声的
Oh, the one that was crying the loudest earlier.
舒维是我的太太。
And Sister Sue is my wife.
我们来自奥马哈，
We come from Omaha,
在 Nebraska。
from Nebraska.
那是一个很安逸，但是没有教会的城市。
And it is a place that does not have one of our churches.
过去2个月，
For the past 2 months,
我在芝加哥南部的一间医院实习。
I have been residing at a hospital in South Chicago.
感谢主，在过去2个月的带领啊。
And I thank the Lord for his guidance in the past 2 months.
然后在这里，我想分享的是，能住在有教会的城市，真的是非常有福气的。
And here I'd like to share that to be able to live at a place with a church is a wonderful thing.
尤其是芝加哥这边教会的弟兄姐妹真的非常有爱心。
Especially at Chicago Church where the members are full of love.
我是2012年来美国的奥马哈的，
I've come to the U.S. in 2012 to Omaha.
当时联系了总会之后，就得到了芝加哥教会的联系方式。
But not long after I received the contact information for Chicago Church.
后来教会的职务会也把我加到邮件的联系人里面。
And later on, I was added into the email list by the church as well.
当时是令姐妹和那个 TJ 传道，
At the time, it was Sister Lynn and Pastor TJ.
他们没多久就亲自开车去奥马哈探访我和附近的信徒。
And not long after, they drove to visit us and the members surrounding the area.
他们是我们在美国接触到的第一批本会信徒。
They were the first members we were in contact with in the States.
那后来舒维受洗了，
And afterwards, my wife was baptized.
然后莉迪亚也出生了，
And then our daughter was born.
然后我呢也一直在准备美国这边的医师执照，考这边的医师执照。
Was preparing for to get my doctor's license in the States.
那感谢主啊！
And I thank the Lord.
后来莉迪亚参加了芝加哥教会的晚上阿姨课，
Later on, Lydia attended the Chicago RE online.
就是芝加哥教会的阿姨老师为了牧养这些小羊的付出，真的很让我们感动。
And the amount of sacrifice that the RE teachers put in for the children was something that was very moving.
因为如果不是花了大量的时间去备课、去做 PPT，
And they spent an immense amount of time preparing the lessons and creating the PowerPoints.
然后想着怎么样问问题来保持小朋友的注意力集中。
And they had to think of ways to keep the children engaged and focused.
因为即使有大人在，这些4、5岁的小朋友也可能闹别扭，不知道跑到哪里去了。
And because even with the presence of adults, the kids, their minds can wander.
然后当时就是 Doreen 姐让我们非常感动，
At the time, Sister Doreen deeply touched us,
她写了非常详细的课堂笔记，
and she wrote very detailed class notes
上课的每一个内容，
for all of the contents of the class.
甚至每一个小朋友回答的每一个问题都写在里面。
And the response that the children gave, they were all recorded.
因为我们作为陪小朋友上课的大人都记不住这么多细节，
And even as parents who would accompany our kids, we couldn't remember all of the details.
然后在疫情稍微缓和以后，
And as the pandemic began to improve,
他又反复邀请我们到他家里参加聚餐，
she invited us over to her house.
那很感谢神啊！
And I thank the Lord.
因为如果没有他这么用心的付出，
If it wasn't for her accommodations,
我真的很难想象，就是 Lydia 现在居然和芝加哥教会的小朋友相处的这么好。
It's hard to imagine how my daughter Lydia could be so well integrated with all the kids in Chicago.
就即使他们很长时间没见，他们也是最好的朋友。
Even though there's been a long period where they couldn't see each other, they're still best friends.
而且也是因为芝加哥教会这边所有阿姨老师的辛勤付出。
And it is all due to the efforts and sacrifice from the RE teachers in Chicago,
然后 Lydia 才念念不忘说，她要当神特别的小孩。
causing my daughter to state how she wanted to be the special children of God.
关键是不单单她洗礼前呐、就是一直想着这个事情。
And before she was baptized, this was always something she thought about.
现在受洗以后，她也一直说要帮2位姐姐祷告。
And after she's baptized, she says she wants to continue to pray for the sisters
因为她希望2个姐姐能够跟她们一样在教会领受圣餐。
because she wishes that the other sisters can, like her, partake the Holy Communion in church.
那这些都不是我和淑伟教的，
And these things were not taught by myself or my wife.
这些都是芝加哥弟兄姐妹爱心付出的结果。
These are all of the fruits of the love and labor of the members of Chicago.
因为在我们全家还不能为神做什么的时候，
Because before our family was unable to do anything for the Lord,
神已经派你们来帮助我们，
the Lord had already sent you all to help us.
真的很感谢神。
I greatly give thanks to the Lord for this.
那19年6月，我是从上海的一家医学院毕业，然后他有天晚上问他妈妈讲，
And one night she told her mother,
他说我每个朋友都有男朋友，
she said, "Every one of my friends has a boyfriend.
我没有，是不是很奇怪？
I don't have a boyfriend. Is that weird?"
所以如果他再不来教会，我怕就来不及了。
So she said, if she doesn't come to church, I'm afraid it's going to be too late.
我怕他接下来几年可能为了变得不那么奇怪，
I'm afraid that in the next few years she'll become strange.
为了不变得那么奇
Oh,
怪
in，order for her to not become so strange.
他可能很快就从学校带个小男生回来见家长，
Because sooner or later she'll bring a little boy back home.
可能是有女儿的爸爸都想的特别多吧。
And perhaps there are many parents with daughters.
但感谢神啊，
But I thank God
因为在教会长大的小朋友真的非常有福气，
because all of the children that grow up in the church are very blessed.
因为在分别为圣的这条路上，他们并不孤单。
Because when it comes to holiness and this journey, they are not alone.
因为并不是只有一个 Lydia 这个小朋友他很奇怪，
Because it is not only Lydia that is strange.
教会里面所有的小朋友都可能因为坚持信仰，在世人的眼里都变得很奇怪。
Because all of the children in church, because of their principle of faith, will be seen as strange to the outside world.
人家可能会问，为什么你们万圣节连糖都不敢要？
They may ask, why do you not go trick-or-treating for Halloween?
为什么你们连恋爱都不敢谈？
Why is it that you don't date around?
为什么你们连大麻都不敢吸？
Why is it that you guys do not use marijuana?
但从小在教会里长大的这些小孩，
But for the children that grow up in the church,
他可以不带一丝怀疑，不带一丝犹豫，也没有一点怀疑的告诉人家，
they can, without a hint of hesitation, tell others,
因为我们是基督徒，
it's because we're Christians.
所以我和苏维商量之后，还是决定尽可能搬到有教会的地方去。
So after I discussed with my wife, we made up our minds to decide to come to a place with a church.
所以今年呢，我们就是申请了所有离教会开车3个小时以内的项目。
So this year, I applied for all of the opportunities that were within a 3-hour driving distance from the church.
但是要符合那个申请的条件呢，
But in order to meet the qualifications for the applications,
我需要拿到3到4分的推荐信，
I needed to receive 3 to 4 letters of recommendation,
考掉有一个叫 OET 考试。
and I had to take an exam called the OET,
那 OET is an occupational English test。
which was an occupational English test.
然后我至少要找到3个医生，
And I need to find 3 doctors
然后帮我完成6个 mini CEX。
to complete 6 mini CXs,
which is a mini clinical evaluation exercise。
which is a mini clinical evaluation exercise.
然后中文就是叫做迷你临床演练评估。然后除了 OET 考试以外，
And aside from the OET exam,
其他全部都是需要在实习的时候跟人家打交道的事情。
all of these things had to be done during an internship where the networking was made.
那由于芝加哥这边的商业实习项目，它在10月有空位，
And with the way things work in Chicago, in October there was a gap.
所以我就过来了。
So I was able to come here,
那也是神的安排了，
which was also the arrangement of God.
因为神知道我有选择困难，就是做选择特别困难，
Because the Lord knew that I had difficulties making up my mind.
所以他这道单选题就给了我一个选项。
So so I was able to have an option.
但其实我压力还是非常大，
But despite this, the pressure I faced was still immense
因为我们全家一个月就$2000多的收入，
because we were only living off $2,000 a month.
然后这边2个月的实习加住宿已经花了将近$5000了。
And for the residency here, I spent around $500 already.
再加上报名住院医师培训项目，还有申请那个 ECFMG 证书，也花了快$4000了。
And applying here and finishing the ECFMG, we've spent around $4,000 for that.
所以到目前为止，已经将近1万多美金花下去了。
So we had already spent over $10,000.
所以就是有这么大的经济压力，我就只能成功，不能失败。
So faced with such immense economic pressure, there was only success and no room for failure.
但更麻烦的地方就是在于我在家里复习了3年，
And added with the difficulty that I had been studying at home for 3 years.
我几乎没什么机会跟人家打交道。
I barely had any opportunities to network with others.
那我本人也非常内向，
And I am also a very introverted person.
不然也不会为了复习在居家隔离了3年。
So through studying and being quarantined, locked down at home for 3 years,
再加上从小家里就教育我，
added with my upbringing,
他说就是千万不要给任何人添任何麻烦。
which was to in no way to ever make it difficult for anyone else.
凡是自己能想办法解决的就解决，就自己解决。
And in whatever way was possible to deal with things yourself, then try to deal with it by your own accord.
如果不能解决呢，你就自认倒霉吧。
And if you're unable to do it, then too bad for you.
所以我非常害怕跟人家打交道，
So this made me very afraid to network with others.
我害怕找人要推荐信，
I was also very afraid to ask people for letters of recommendation.
我也非常害怕找人帮我做那个评估，
And I was also very afraid to ask other people to evaluate me.
然后我更害怕找人要面试机会，
And even more afraid of asking others for opportunities for interviews.
因为我非常害怕被别人拒绝，
Because I was very afraid of being rejected by others.
而且我也非常害怕给可能影响自己前途的领导留下很不好的印象。
And I was very scared of leaving a bad impression on others.
然后我计划3到4封推荐信里面有2封是来自以前的博士导师，
And the 3 to 4 letters of recommendation I had, around 2 of them were from previous professors.
但我害怕给人家留下不好的印象，
And I was afraid of leaving behind a bad impression.
然后就一直都没敢联系他们。
So I was afraid to contact them.
然后拖到10月份，我实在等不了了，我才联系他们。
And when it was October, when I could wait no more, I finally reached out to them.
那我本来是计划10月的时候，我通过实习至少再拿到1封推荐信。
And I originally planned through the residency in October, I would be able to at least get 1 more letter of rec.
然后找到这个医生帮我完成2个评估，
And to find a doctor that would help me finish 2 more of these evaluations.
结果实习的第1天非常不顺利。
But the first day of my residency did not go smooth.
当天那个代教看起来很凶
That day,
，the preceptor，
the preceptor was very mean.
然后他问的问题我也没有一个答得上来，
And the questions that they asked, I was unable to respond back.
再加上苏维当天在接莉迪亚的高速路上爆胎了，
added with the fact that my wife picking up my daughter, they had a flat tire on the highway.
然后他只能联系钢琴老师的先生来帮忙。
And the only contact they could find was the piano teacher's husband.
那我当天就更内疚了。
So that was how the course of the day went.
我现在花了这么多时间、精力还有钱，
I had had such an experience, such money, and invested in all this.
然后把舒维一个人扔在奥马哈照顾莉迪亚。
And I left my wife in Omaha, and she had to take care of my daughter as well.
他现在遇到意外状况了，我一点忙都帮不上。
And now that they've faced a circumstance that I was unable to be of any help of.
然后我自己这边看起来，可能连第一份推荐信都要不到。
And it seemed that I wasn't able to receive even one letter of recommendation here either.
但很感谢主了，
But I still thank the Lord
因为芝加哥的弟兄姐妹真的非常有爱心。
because the members in Chicago showed immense love.
因为我当时住在芝加哥南边，
Because I lived on the south side of Chicago,
然后就是去教会比较远，
and it was a further distance from the church.
所以周五的晚上我就住在 Doreen 姐家里，
So on Fridays, I would stay at Sister Doreen's house.
然后第二天跟她一起去教会。
And then on the next day, we would go to church.
她知道我的情况以后，就鼓励我马上跟医生去要推荐信。
And when she realized my circumstance, she told me to make haste to find these letters of rec.
那我当时就很疑惑，
And I was confounded
因为我没有一个问题答得上来，
because there wasn't a single question that I was able to answer.
人家凭什么给我写推荐信？
So why did I deserve for them to write a letter of rec for me?
然后她就跟我说，
But she told me
她跟我说的是马太福音7章7到8节，
the verse in Matthew chapter 7, verse 7 to 8.
上面说：你们祈求就给你们，寻找就寻见，叩门就给你们开门。因为凡祈求的就得着，寻找的就寻见，叩门的就给他开门。
Ask and it shall be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened to you. For everyone that asks receives, and he that seeks finds, and to him that knocks it shall be opened.
那就是到了周一的时候，我做了很长的思想斗争。
So when it came to Monday, after putting a long period of thought into it,
那在心里也默祷了很久，
and after saying a silent prayer in my heart,
一直等到下班的时候，
I waited until the workday was done.
我才就是强迫自己去跟他要推荐信。
I forced myself to go and ask for this letter of rec.
但是一句完整的话都讲不清楚。
And I wasn't able to get a coherent sentence out.
说不害怕，那可能是假的。
And to say I wasn't afraid would be lying.
那感谢神啊，他居然同意了。
But I thank God that they agreed.
这个真的是超出我的认知了。
And this went beyond my rationale.
我们有一个就是中国医学毕业生的微信群，
We have a WeChat group for different Chinese a doctoral group,
medical graduate，
medical graduate group.
然后所有人都认为
And all of them held the same belief
你只有表现好了，你才有资格去要推荐信。
that only if you gave an exceptional performance, then you had the right to ask for a letter of rec.
而且我真的不是个例，
And I was no exception either,
因为在我结束實習的最後一天，
because the last day before my residency ended,
有一個印度來的醫學畢業生
there was an Indian that
medical
was
graduate，
a graduate that came to,
他問我你是不是拿到推薦信了？
and they asked me, "Did you receive a letter of rec?"
然後我說他說我已經來這邊3週了，你覺得我今天問他要推薦信合不合適？
And they said, "I've been here for around 3 weeks. Do you think it would be appropriate for me to ask for a letter today?"
那感謝主啊！
So I thank the Lord,
其實拿到這份信中間也是非常曲折的，
because of the process of getting this letter was very difficult.
因为他当时说答应我给我写推荐信的时候，我非常高兴。
Because when they agreed to give me this letter of rec, I was very happy at first.
我都不敢问他你什么时候能帮我把这个信弄好，
But I was too scared to ask around what time they would be able to get me this letter.
因为人家答应帮你就已经是帮了你很大的忙了。
Because other people offering to help you out was already an immense help.
那你再一直催人家什么时候好，什么时候好，是不是你很不礼貌？
But to continue to pester them and ask them when they could give you the letter is quite rude.
所以我拖了1周以后，我才开始每天问他你什么时候帮我写。
So I waited around a week before I started to ask them every day, when can you get me this letter?
我连续催了好几天，
So I asked for multiple days,
他终于受不了了。
and they finally couldn't take it anymore.
他说第2天让他的护士帮我上传推荐信，
So he said, the next day I'll have the nurse upload it for you.
然后我所有细节都跟他的护士讲好了。
So I already we already spoken and agreed upon this with the nurse.
然后这个护士辞职了，
But then the nurse resigned.
所以一直到10月底，
So till the end of October,
新来的护士上班了，
when a new nurse came,
他才帮我把已经写好的推荐信上传。
then that nurse was able to upload the finished letter for me.
那真的很感谢神啊！
So I thank God for that,
就神赐给芝加哥教会的弟兄姐妹属灵的智慧和爱心。
for the Lord to bestow spiritual wisdom and knowledge to the members of Chicago.
如果没有祈求、寻见、叩门这个经节，
And if it wasn't for the verse that told us about asking, seeking, and knocking,
我可能到10月份结束都没有一份推荐信。
then I may have ended October without a single letter of rec.
因为新来的护士单单是帮忙上传推荐信，就已经花了他1周多的时间。
Because for the new nurse to upload the letter, it took them around a week.
如果没有之前已经辞职的护士帮忙把这个信写好，
So if it wasn't for the previous nurse that had already finished this letter,
这份推荐信我可能就再也要不到了。
then it would have been impossible for me to request for this letter at all.
那就是10月份的时候，还有一件事情就是让我比较感动，
And then in October, there was also another event that deeply moved me.
那就是当时那个华人医师协会组织了一次模拟面试，
Which was when the
The Chinese Physician Association，
Chinese Physician Association,
他们组织了一次 mock interview。
they held a mock interview.
我以为就是他们就是帮我们准备一下怎么面试，
And I thought that they would help us prepare this in the process.
那后来 Doreen 姐知道以后，
But after Sister Doreen found out about it,
她就提醒我2个事情。
she reminded me 2 things.
第一个就是不要轻看神给我们的任何机会，
The first is to never look lightly upon the opportunities that God provides us.
然后第二个是虽然被面试的是我们自己，
And the second is that although we're the ones that are being interviewed,
那我们总要记得
we must remember,
那句英文是 None of self, all of thee，
which is none of self and all of thee,
也就是说我不可以只在乎表现自己，
which is that I should not only place concern for how I perform.
所以面试的时候我介绍了自己，
So during the interview, I introduced myself.
我也访问了他，就是那个模拟面试官，就是那个 mock interviewer 他的工作情况。
And I also asked about the interviewer of their job and how they were,
因为人家花时间义务帮我们，
because they placed their time and effort to help us.
我也想看看自己有没有可能哪里能够帮到他。
I wanted to also see if there was any way that I could also help them also.
当时面试我的那个医学教授，
At the time, the medical professor that interviewed me,
他是来自全美国排名前15的一个医学院。
they came from one of the top 15 medical schools in the States.
那面试以后，他留了邮箱给我，
And after the interview, they left a contact information.
我们至今还保持联系。
And to this day, we are still in contact.
他非常用心的给了我很多建议和指导。
And with great diligence, they gave me very good advice and guidance.
甚至他为了帮我找实习，特地联系了芝加哥这边的熟人。
And even to help me out for a residency, they contacted some connections in Chicago.
但最后因为疫情的缘故，那个医院没有开放实习。
But because of the pandemic, the hospital did not open up for residencies.
但通过这个事情，我确实看到了，
But through this event, I was able to see
圣经上面告诉我们要爱邻舍，
the Bible says to love our neighbors,
要用爱心对待遇到的人，
to show love to those that we meet.
实际上是在帮助我们自己。
But in truth, this is all to help ourselves.
我记得书店里面有很多书，
I remember that there were many books in a bookstore
告诉你们要用各种心机、各种手段去获得各种好处。
that teach you many tips and tricks to receive benefits and an edge.
让就是只会懂得忍让和用爱心待人的基督徒看起来非常的愚拙。
And using that sort of knowledge, it'll make a loving and God-fearing Christian look very foolish.
但实际上，就像哥林多前书1章27节说的，神拣选了世上愚拙的，叫有智慧的羞愧；又拣选了软弱的，叫那强壮的羞愧。
But we see in the Bible in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 27, that God has chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty.
那后来到了11月，
And then when November came,
那最麻烦的已经不是推荐信了，
the most bothersome thing was no longer a letter of recommendation,
而是找3个医生帮我完成那6个评估。
it was to find doctors to help me finish the 6 evaluations.
那10月份帮我写推荐信的那个医生，他不愿意帮我做评估，
And the doctor that helped me finish the letter of rec was unwilling to help me with the evaluation.
所以我等于要在11月找到3个医生帮我做这个评估。
So this means that in November I had to find 3 doctors to finish the evaluations for me.
那当然有了之前推荐信的经验，
And through the experience I gained through the process of the letter of recommendations,
然后第一天我就问那个新的代教医生，
so the first day I asked the doctor
然后问他你能不能帮我做这个评估？
that if they were able to help me with this evaluation.
他根本就搞不清楚这是什么，他就同意了。
And they did not really know what this was, so they agreed.
但他太忙了，
But they were too busy.
我每天问他，他都是没时间。
And every day when I brought this up, they had no time.
问了2周以后，他烦了，
So after 2 weeks, they became annoyed.
他说明天100%帮你做 ，OK？
So they said, tomorrow I will do it for you, 100% guaranteed.
然后第2天做完，他非常不高兴，
So the next day, after they finished it, they were very unhappy.
你这个事情太麻烦了，
They said that this thing is too annoying.
早知道我就不答应你了，
Had I known, I wouldn't have agreed.
以后我也再也不会做这个事情。
And in the future, I would never help anyone with this anymore.
这个代教医生他是印度裔的，
And this doctor was Indian.
我后来才知道，
Later on, I found out
在那个印度学生占大半的医院，
in a hospital where the Indian students took up over half the population.
我居然是他唯一一个做过这个评估的学生。
I was the only student that ever received an evaluation from him.
因为之前也有印度学生找他做这个事情，
Because previously, some other Indian students had asked for this evaluation.
但不知道是不是因为他太忙了，反正最后他没有弄完。
But either because the doctor was too busy or other factors, they never finished the process.
那很感谢神呢，我是在11月的第2周找他做完了这2个评估。
So I thank God that the second week of November, the doctor finished these 2 evaluations for me.
因为第3周他就休假了，
And the third week, they had vacation.
那休假前他也帮我写了第4份推荐信。
But before that, they wrote a letter of rec, the 4th letter of rec for me.
如果我没有每天跟在他后面催他，
So if it wasn't for me bugging him all day,
我可能就永远失去这个机会了，因为我再也见不到他了。
then I would probably have lost this opportunity because I would never see them again.
因为他休假回来，我已经结束实习了。
Because after they would come back from their vacation, I would be done with my residency.
那感谢神，让我至少抓住这次机会。
So I thank God for at least giving me this opportunity.
那接下来我还要再找2个医生来完成剩下的4个评估。
And next, I would have to find 2 more doctors to finish these 4 evaluations.
这个评估最麻烦的地方有2个。
And the most difficult part for the evaluation, there were 2 things.
第一个是要允许你能够接触病人，
The first is that they have to permit for you to interact with patients.
第二个更难，他要愿意无偿帮忙。
And the second is even harder, which is they have to be able to be of help under all circumstances
without pay。
without pay.
然后我想了好几天，我都想不出来为什么人家要帮我。
And after thinking about it, I couldn't think of a reason why this would be of help.
那就是为了帮助我，就是就是尽可能多的接触医生。
So in order to help more and to get more exposure to the doctors,
Doreen 姐花了很多时间帮我修改简历，
Sister Doreen spent a lot of time helping me to revise my resume,
my CV。
my CV.
然后她甚至根据每个医院的不同撰写不同的个人陈述 personal statement。
And for different hospitals, I had a different tailored personal statement for each.
她知道我和别人打交道有困难，
Because she understood I had difficulties networking with people.
她教我怎么样跟医生介绍自己，
She taught me the process of how I should introduce myself
要
to
问哪些问
doctors
题。
and the questions that I should be asking.
那后来我就真的跑了一趟芝加哥大学，
So I gave a visit to Chicago University.
那后来我就是问了好多人才知道，他们当天的那个项目主任也在。
And after asking around, I realized the chair was,
Program director。
the program director was present that day.
然后因为他在门诊
And,
in the clinic，
and because they were in the clinic,
我就让他的前台帮忙带个话，就 receptionist。
the receptionist was the one that helped me.
然后那个前台说：“你把简历和你的材料留下，你就可以回去了。”
So the receptionist said you can leave behind your CV and your information, and then you can go.
但后来就是总觉得这个事情不对，
Then I felt that there was something wrong.
所以后来就在门诊门口继续等。
So I stayed by the door and waited.
那不仅见到了那个项目主任，
And I was able to meet the program director,
然后也碰到了另一个教授，
as well as another professor.
那都跟他们聊了一会儿。
And I had the opportunity to converse with them for a brief moment.
那他们就是给了我很多建议。
And they gave me plenty of advice.
那后来项目主任导师没有对我的简历做任何评价，
And so later on, the program director didn't give me an evaluation,
但他至少也告诉我，我们今年已经没有面试机会了。
but at least he broke the news to me that there was no more opportunities for interviews this year.
但我后来觉得，我今天已经问到很多有用的信息了。
But I felt that I had already received a lot of important information today.
然后再让这2个业内就是这么有名的教授，然后来帮我做这个小小的评估，好像太麻烦他们了。
And to have such a renowned people to do these evaluations for me would be too much of a hassle for them.
所以没有问他们，就是能不能做这个 mini CX， 就做这个评估。
So I didn't ask them if they could help me with this evaluation.
那后来就是Doreen 姐知道以后，她跟我讲，
So later on, Sister Doreen told me,
她说你不要害怕麻烦任何人，
she said I shouldn't be afraid of asking others for help.
她说如果你问了他们，他们愿意，你就完成了。
Because if you asked them and they agreed, then you would be done with your task.
如果他们不愿意，他们也能给你指条路。
But if they are unwilling, then this would just give you closure.
最坏把你排除一个错误选项。
and it would help you eliminate another one of your options.
那后来我是知道大医院基本上是不行的，
And later on, I find out that the larger hospitals generally don't do this
因为他们的实习项目因为 COVID 就没有开放。
because of COVID. Many of the residencies were no longer open,
这样子我就不能够接触任何病人，
so I wouldn't be able to interact with patients.
所以后来我就把通讯录和微信里面几乎所有人都问了一遍。
So later on, I went through my directory and through the WeChat and asked around.
那大部分人就说你在你自己实习的地方找啊，
And most of them advised that I should just find around the region where I had my residency
要么你去私人小诊所问一问，他们可能没那么严格。
to ask the private clinics because they wouldn't be as strict.
那所以这两个地方我确实都联系了。
So indeed, I went to these two locations.
我在实习的地方，我把能遇到的人全部都问了一个遍。
And I went to all the people I knew at the residency and I asked them all.
结果遇到的医生，他们就说我没有带过你，我不能够给你评估。
And the doctor said that you were not under my watch, so I cannot give you an evaluation.
然后有的说我愿意，但是我已经做满10个评估了，我没办法给你再做。
And some said, I wish I could, but I've already finished 10 evaluations, so I can't do any more.
那我后来打开 Google，
So later on, I opened up Google
我搜附近的免费诊所，
and I looked around for free clinics around me,
一个个打电话。
and I called them one by one.
但是只要你是和预约看病没关系的，全部转到语音信箱去了。
But if it was a matter that did not have to do with an appointment, then you would turn to the voicemail.
然后后来我又去了唐人街，
So I went to Chinatown.
然后就是那边每一家华人诊所我都去敲门。
So I went to every one of the Asian clinics and I knocked on their doors.
那基本上就是被拒绝了。
And most of them rejected me.
比较礼貌一点的，就是说你的简历留下，我们到时候再联系你。
And the ones that gave me a more polite, soft answer said that we'll consider after looking at your information.
那到今天为止，我一个电话都没接到，
But to this day, I still haven't received any of their phone calls.
所以真的很感谢神啊！
So I still thank God
因为我后来能在3周内的时间，我找到这3个医生，帮我完成这6个评估，完全是神的恩典。
because later on, within 3 weeks, I was able to find 3 doctors to finish 6 of these evaluations. That was a miracle.
因为当时第2个医生是因为微信里有一个人，我以前帮过他，
And the second evaluation was because there was someone in the WeChat group that I had helped before.
他需要有审稿的机会，就是reviewing manuscript。
And they needed a reviewing manuscript.
然后我后来就帮他联系了这个事情。
So later on, I found the contact information for them.
他以前也在我现在这个医院，他就是实习过。
And prior to this, they were also had a residency at the same hospital as me.
他知道有一个医生是愿意帮忙的，
And they knew of a doctor that was willing to do this.
但是这个医生很难找。
But this doctor was very hard to find.
那我后来就去找了，
So later on, I found the doctor.
感谢主啊，那天他刚好就在办公室里面，
I thank God that day they were in their office.
然后他当天就帮我做掉2个评估了。
So on that same day, they were able to finish 2 evaluations.
是的，所以真的很感谢神。
So I truly thank God for that.
圣经上面说，施比受更为有福，
The Bible says to give is better than to receive.
哪怕你只是小小的善意帮别人一下，
And if it's just a small deed of goodness that you do for others,
神都会纪念的。
the Lord will still remember it.
在我们最需要的时候，神就帮回我们。
And in our most desperate time of need, the Lord will help us.
那我找到的第3个医生是一个夜间急诊的医生，
So the third doctor I found was a doctor that did the night watch for ER.
因为能找到他也是很感谢神的。
And finding this doctor was something that I thank God for.
因为当时在想，就是白天的上班的医生我都找过了，还有什么医生没找过呢？
Because I had finished all of the doctors that worked during the day, so I thought, what other doctors can I find?
那只剩下晚上了。
So So they're the doctors that worked at night,
那晚上就只有急诊了。
and at nighttime there was only the ER,
那里不仅有医生，
and there had to be doctors there,
然后随时都有病人。
and there had to be patients there as well.
那感谢主的怜悯啊！
So I thank the Lord for His mercy,
我当时去找的那个医生，急诊医生，
because when I went to find that ER doctor,
我跟他说了，我需要你帮我评估2个病人。
when I told them that I needed 2 evaluations from you,
他马上就给我指了2个病人，你去吧。
he pointed 2 patients for me and said, you can go to help them.
当天晚上就评估掉了，
So that night I got the 2 evaluations.
真的特别感谢神啊！
So I sincerely thank the Lord,
我前面联系了那么久，一个回应都没有。
because previously I had been contacting all of them one by one and I had no response.
结果从第一个医生他开始评估，到第2个医生，到最后一个医生，第3个医生完成评估，一共就1周多一点。
So going from the first doctor to evaluate the second doctor and the third, it was no more than over a week.
因为我知道有很多人是花了好几个月，甚至半年以上的时间才找到这三个医生的。
Because many others have spoke of their experience of how it took months or even half a year to finish all 3 of these processes.
所以目前为止，我已经完成今年申请项目所有的必须的条件了。
So as of now, I have finished all that I need to do for my applications for the year.
那感谢神，
So I thank God,
因为来芝加哥这边2个月完成的事情，你看比过去3年做的事情都要多。
that just coming to Chicago alone, I was able to finish more than the 3 years that I spent alone.
所以能待在有教会的城市，真的非常有福气。
So it is truly blessed and wonderful to be at a place with a church.
我其实就是遇到过很多移民来美国的中国人，
And I have encountered many immigrants, Chinese immigrants that came to the States.
我们年龄差不多，
And we were around the same age,
我们有非常多相似的地方，
and we had plenty in common.
我们都受过大学教育，
We were all college educated.
我们能说英文，
We could all speak English.
但我们凡事都谨小慎微，就特别小心的那种，
And we are all the very neurotic and careful type.
什么事情都追求完美，
And we are chasing perfectionism in all things.
但同时看待很多事情又非常的悲观。
And we always had a pessimistic outlook of life.
但其实小心也好，完美也罢，
And whether it be being extra careful or being a perfectionist,
甚至有的时候消极和悲观，
or even belittling ourselves and looking negatively.
那大部分都是因为对未来和未知的情况充满了恐惧。
And the majority of the time we are occupied with thoughts of fear and dread for the future.
没有安全感，
And we had no sense of safety.
我们害怕给别人添麻烦，
We were scared of being a trouble to others.
我们害怕被拒绝，
We were scared of being rejected.
我们害怕给人留下不好的印象。
We were scared of leaving a poor impression.
那最后我们表现出来的
In the end, we have shown for ourselves
就是极度的不自信。
of the lack of self-confidence.
这种害怕
And this fear
不仅对求职有害，
not only will harm us in this process,
也严重影响我们传福音给身边的家人朋友。
but it also hampers us in the process of preaching to our family and friends.
我没能传福音给我外公就是一个例子。
For no one to preach to my in-laws was one of the examples.
就是虽然我妈妈在嫁给我父亲以后就信主了，
Although after my mother married her father, they believed in the Lord,
但我外公一家没有信主，
but my in-laws' household, they did not believe.
他们家里每一个角落都有偶像，
And in every corner of their house, they had idols.
但是外公家又住在教会旁边，
But they lived right next to a church.
所以小时候聚会结束了，我就经常去外公家。
So when I was little, when I finished church, I would go to their house.
那时候很小，我跟外公提过一次信耶稣，
And I remember when I was little, I brought up the topic to them about believing in Jesus.
他说你再讲我就把你赶出去。
And they replied, if you say that one more time, I'll kick you out.
那真的，后来因为害怕他生气啊，
And truly, because I was fearful that they would get angry,
一直到他去世，我都没敢再跟他传过福音了，
even till the day they died, I never brought up Jesus again.
那非常遗憾。
And it is something that I'm remorseful for.
就是将来即使能够进入天国，
In the future, if they can enter the heavenly kingdom,
那里也没有外公。
I would not be able to see them.
如果趁着外公还在的时候，
And had they still been on earth,
如果我也能拿出今天要推荐信找医生做评估的这种镜头，
and had I exercised the spirit that I put in an effort for getting these letters,
不断重复祈求、寻找、叩门这个过程，
and I did not give up and continue to knock, to seek, and to ask,
跟我外公传福音，
to try to preach to him,
不要畏惧人，过于畏惧神，
to not fear man more than fearing God,
那结果就完全不一样了。
then wouldn't the result have been different?
因为当时最坏我就是被赶出去嘛，
Because the worst that could have happened at the time was to be kicked out.
等他气消了，我又可以回来跟他继续传，是不是？
But after his anger subsided, he would, of course, let me back in.
即使我传了一辈子，他也不信，
And had I preached my whole life and he still did not
那
believe,
至少我真的没有遗憾了。
then at least I would have no regrets.
而且往好的方面想，
And thinking on the right end,
只要神记着我的努力，感动他多听进去一点点，哪怕只有一点点，
had the Lord moved him, and even if he accepted just a little bit,
我们就多一点机会，将来可以在天国见。
then wouldn't we have more of an opportunity to see each other in heaven?
那感谢主啊！
And I thank God.
在芝加哥的这2个月，我完成了别人可能要准备大半年的事情。
In my 2 months in Chicago, I was able to finish what would take others over half a year to do.
也超过了自己过去3年能完成的所有事情。
And it also surpassed what I was able to accomplish in my 3 years by myself.
而且更重要的是，因为神让我看到了芝加哥弟兄姐妹的爱心可以影响一个人甚至一家人。
And through the love and what I was able to observe and see in the Chicago church, it greatly impacted and affected myself and my family.
我在芝加哥的这段时间呢，
So during my time in Chicago,
不止一位弟兄姐妹啊，
not only was it a few brethren,
他们每周6都想着帮我，就带我来教会，
but they always had me in their hearts to try to bring me to church,
甚至愿意提供住宿。
and even offered place for me to lodge.
但后来实在是因为我住的医院太远了，就只能放弃了。
And because it was, I had to give it up because it was too far from where I lived.
那当时刚来芝加哥的时候，
And when I had just come to Chicago,
我为了省钱，也为了省事，
in order to save money and to save the extra hassle,
所以我就去买了牛奶、面包、腌黄瓜和鸡胸肉片，就免煮的那种，不用煮了。
I bought some bread, some toast, some ham, some pickles, and things that did not need a lot of hassle to prepare.
然后就这么吃了1周。
And I ate that for a week.
那后来抖音姐知道以后，
After Sister Doreen found out how I was eating,
她每周都帮我准备1整周的食物。
she prepared a full week's worth of food for me.
然后我拍了照片发给我妈妈，
And I took a picture of it and sent it to my mother.
我妈妈还在中国的福州，
My mother was still in Fuzhou in China
我从小就是在福州长大的。
because I grew up there when I was little.
我妈妈当时2个反应，
My mother had 2 reactions.
第一个反应是这么准备要花多少钱呢？
The first reaction was, how much money did it take to prepare all that?
那第2个反应是，
And the second reaction was,
她是疯了吗？
is this person crazy?
为什么要花这么多钱给非亲非故的人准备这么多吃的？
Why would anyone in their right mind spend so much time and money on someone that wasn't even a kindred to them?
那其实我不怪我妈妈，他们那一辈一开始有这样的反应，
But I don't blame my mother for their generation, from their generation perspective and reaction.
因为就像圣经上面说的，马太福音24章12节，
As the Bible says in Matthew chapter 24, verse 12,
只因不法的事增多，许多人的爱心才渐渐冷淡。
that it was because of the iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall grow cold.
他们那个年代的人经历过巨大的社会动荡，
Because their generation faced such a social upheaval,
就像马太福音10章21节说的，
just as in Matthew chapter 10, verse 21, it says,
弟兄要把弟兄，父亲要把儿子送到死地，儿女要与父母为敌，害死他们。
as the brother shall deliver up the brother to death, and the father the child.
这些事情呢是真实的发生过的，
And all of these things have truly occurred.
虽然几十年过去了，
And although decades have passed,
那个社会上人和人之间的互相信任已经一点都没有了。
The trust and any of these feelings in their society is no longer existent.
做好事在他们看来不是愚蠢，就是有不好的动机。
For someone to do good in their society is viewed as foolish or even as something with an ulterior motive.
那在很多年以前呢，
And many years ago,
是大陆的南京，
in Nanking in China,
2006年的时候有一个关于彭宇的法律案件。
in 2006, there was a civil case.
然后就是说的是有一个年轻人叫彭宇，
There was a youth by the name of Peng Yu
他在马路上看到一个老太太摔倒，
who saw a old lady stumble on the
他
street.
就过去扶她呀，
So he went over to try to lift her up.
好心把她送到医院去啊。
And out of a kind heart, he took her to the hospital.
然后老太太一家就把这个年轻人告上法院。
But then the family of the old lady, they took this to court.
要他付医疗费，
They wanted him to pay all of the hospital fees
理由是肯定是你把他弄摔了。
because they said that it must have been you that hurt my mom.
最后这个老太太一家胜诉了，赢了。
And in the end, the side of the old lady won.
因为根据常理
And because of the common practice,
除了肇事者，
for the offender,
没有人会把摔倒的老太送医院去。
there would be no one else that would send the old lady to the hospital.
所以可想而知，到今天为止，
So to this day,
大陆已经很少有人看到老人家跌倒了还会热心的去帮忙了，没有了。
in China, you don't really see anyone help old people that are struggling or have fallen down anymore.
那感谢主啊！
But I thank the Lord
我跟我妈妈详细解释了，Doreen姐也同样帮助教会里面其他有需要的弟兄姐妹。
that after describing how Sister Doreen has helped me and also other members in the church in need,
那我妈妈非常感动，
my mother was deeply moved,
她说
and she said,：“
人家用爱心对你，你一定要心存感恩。
she said, how others have treated you with love, you must show your gratitude from your heart. ”
那我就跟她说
So I said,：“
我说是啊，
indeed,
人家感谢神的恩典，
they have repaid the grace of God.
所以用这样的爱心去照顾教会其他的弟兄姐妹。
So with the same love, they have taken care of the other members.
那神为我们家做了这么多事情，我们又为神做了什么事情？
Since the Lord has done so much for us, what more can we do for him?
那我就跟她说，我们不应该拿1/10出来感谢神吗？
So I said, should we not offer our tithes to the Lord
那感谢神啊，
to give thanks to him?
因为这么多年了，
Because through so many years,
我妈妈是第一次没有反驳11捐的。
it was the first time my mother was not opposed to offering tithes.
因为换以前呢，她每次都讲，
Because previously she would always say,
你愿意是你的事情，
if you're willing to offer, it's your thing.
你自己的钱你想怎么花都可以，
Since it's your money, you can do as you wish,
我管不着。
but I can't keep you.
那其实没有人是完美的，
And there's no one that is perfect.
因为经历过生活的艰难，
Because after they've encountered the difficulties of life
也遭遇过社会的险恶，
and have seen the upheaval of society,
那每个人都有自己的属灵的功课要做。
then each individual will have their own homework and lessons to learn.
我妈妈是，
For my mother,
我自己也是，
as well as for myself.
因为如果没有神的怜悯和拣选，
Because if it wasn't for the mercy of the Lord and his election,
那我今天也不可能站在这里做见证。
then I would not be here today to testify.
那感谢主，
So I thank the Lord
因为芝加哥教会的弟兄姐妹真的非常有爱心。
because the members of Chicago Church are full of love.
我在这边的2个月，因着弟兄姐妹的爱心，从神那里得了非常多的恩典。
My 2 months here, the love and the mercy and blessings from God have been bountiful.
能待在有教会的城市，真的非常有福气。
To be able to dwell in a city with a church is a wonderful thing.
那也求神让我们全家能够搬到有教会的城市。
And I pray to the Lord that we will be able to move to a city with a church.
那我在这里见证，
This concludes my testimony.
愿一切荣耀归给神。
May all glory and honor be to God.
我们谢谢蔡玉弟兄他美好的见证。
We thank Brother Tair for his wonderful testimony.
他一开始谈到他希望他的女儿能够亲近教会。
How in the beginning he mentioned how his daughter wished to be close to a church.
因为如同箴言22章的6节那里所说的，
Because as it says in Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6,
说教养孩童使他走当行的道，就是到老他也不偏离。
that to train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it.
让我们想到说，我们仍然还有一些我们的小羊们却没有办法经常亲近教会。
And we can't, if we think about it, there are some of our little sheep that are unable to come to church frequently.
也许是因为我们做大人的缘故。
And it may be because the parents,
所以我们也应该要帮助我们的这个下一代，
so we must help the next generation.
让他们能够因着我们提供给他们一个好的信仰环境而受到造就。
That from our efforts to provide a nurturing environment for their faith, they can be greatly edified.
就如同宪法保障每一个人都有受教育的权利一样。
Just as the Constitution guarantees everyone has the right to an education.
同样的，我们既然让我们的儿女受洗了，
And since we have agreed to have our children baptized,
我们怎么可以剥夺他们来接受宗教教育的权利呢？
then how can we forbid and take away their right for a religious education?
希望我们做家长的，我们要清楚，要明白。
So I hope that the parents can be clear and understand this.
那他蔡弟兄也提到这个写推荐信的事。
And Brother Tai also mentioned the process of finding the letters of recommendation.
小弟特别有感而发。
And I also have something to say about this.
因为在翻译的这一个我的小儿子他也是要教授帮他写推荐信。
Because my son was also looking for professors to write letters of recommendation.
因为他也是在准备要申请研究所。
Because he is also applying for graduate school.
那同样他也是很内向的人。
Likewise, he is also very introverted.
也是一样跟蔡弟兄一样，觉得不好意思。
He also felt a sense of embarrassment to ask.
那早知道就早一点听蔡弟兄的见证了。
So had I known, he should have listened to Brother Tsai's testimony earlier.
罗马书8章的31节。
In Romans chapter 8, verse 31.
既是这样还有什么说的呢？神若帮助我们，谁能抵挡我们呢？
What shall we say to these things? For if God be for us, who can be against us?
那并且说到要用这样的精神来传福音。
And to have this sort of attitude in preaching,
我们赞美诗有一首叫做《开船入深海》。
there is a hymn in our hymn book that is about launching out into the deep.
谈到说有一些人不敢尝试只敢靠在海岸慢慢在那边航行。
How there are some that are afraid to experience the ocean, so they stay close to the shoreline.
怕风浪
They are afraid of the waves and the wind.
不敢深入到这个汪洋里头去捕鱼。
They are afraid of going into the deep to fish.
那今天我们传福音一定要勇敢。
So today when we are preaching, we must be brave.
神跟我们同在，我们还怕什么？
Because if God is for us, then what can we fear?
我们是要把得救美好的信息给人家。
Because we are bringing the gospel of salvation to others.
就好像说我们要请人家吃饭一样。
Just as if we are trying to take someone out for a meal.
我们要把这个礼物送给人家。
We are trying to gift something to them.
那怎么会不好意思？
Then why would we be embarrassed?
明天来我家吃饭，不好意思我不敢请你你一定说明天来我家吃饭。
If we're trying to tell them to come over to my house for a meal, we wouldn't be very scared to do it. We would ask them, yeah, come over.
我有很好的礼物要送你。
or if we have a wonderful present that we want to give them,
哦，怎么会不好意思啊？不敢啊，一定是说来来来，东西送你。
we wouldn't be embarrassed about giving it to them, but we would be very happy to show them what we have for them.
我们要有这样的一个精神哦。
So we must also possess this attitude.
哦，那想必啊，我们一定能够把握这个机会把这个福音让更多人能够知道。
And we must take hold of the opportunity to let the gospel be spread and more people to know about it.
哦，那当然拣选在于神。
Of course, it is up to God,
哦，但是尽责任在于我们。
but the responsibility and the charge is laid upon us.
哦，至少我们到时候在神的面前我们问心无愧，我们没有遗憾。
So that at least in the future we can stand before God boldly and without regrets.
哦，那蔡弟兄也谈到说，在教会里头一些弟兄姐妹的帮助。
And Brother Tsai did also bring up the help that he received from the members in the church.
哦，真的像这个 Gabriel 弟兄还有 Aaron 弟兄，他们是在这个普渡念书的。
For Brother Gabriel and Brother Aaron, who are studying in Purdue out of state.
哦，那我们也经常看到他们两个来参加我们安息日的聚会。
We also see them come to worship with us very often.
哦，那是小弟刚好来的时候他们就待在教会里头一起过夜。
And if I'm here, then they would stay the night with us.
哦，那有时候他们是有弟兄姐妹接他们到他们家里去过夜。
And other times it will be the members that would take them to spend the night there.
哦，我相信在他们的心里头也一定跟蔡弟兄一样充满着感恩。
And I believe in their hearts, just like Brother Tsai, they are full of gratitude.
哦，我们相信我们在座有一些弟兄姐妹都是默默的在做这些事情。
I believe that there are also members that are doing these things doing these things privately.
那虽然不一定大家都知道，但是主耶稣都已经记录下来了。
And although not everyone may know about it, the Lord has already made an account of this.
那我们也希望说这样子的这个美好的美事能够有更多人来关心更多人一起来做。
And I hope that these wonderful things and beautiful matters, more people can attend to these things and be aware of it.
让我们芝加哥教会充满着神的爱，
And the Chicago church is full of the love of God
充满着造就人的见证。
and testimonies that are very edifying.
那我想我们下午的见证会到这边。
So with that, we will conclude our afternoon testimony session.
那其实我们弟兄姐妹如果平常你有美好的见证你都可以跟负责人来联络。
And if any members have a wonderful testimony that they would like to share, they can contact the council.
小弟发现我们听见证比较不打瞌睡了。
I've observed that we are less likely to fall asleep during a testimony session,
尤其下午的时候。
especially in the afternoon.
这个传道讲到台下这个一拼命点头
Because a lot of people are dozing off.
不知道传道到底是要高兴还是要好，那以后如果我们有见证我们不一定说只有灵恩会才能做见证。
So if we have a testimony, we do not only have to save it for a spiritual convocation.
美国总会特别把明年2023年定为宣道年。
The USGA has made the theme of next year evangelism.
还有一个题目叫做得人如鱼
And another theme of making fishers of men.
那我们也计划说明年我们希望能够每一季我们都有一个季布道。
And I hope that next year for every quarter we can have an evangelical service.
那配合这个灵恩会等于说我们每个 quarter 我们都有布道会。
So that with in each quarter we can have evangelical service.
那我们也需要很多弟兄姐妹要投入这个工作。
And we need a lot of members to help in this area.
那我们现在也开始恢复这个家庭的in person 实体的聚会了。
And we are also resuming our in-person family services.
那我们也很希望说在这个实体的家庭聚会我们跟以前一样都能够带慕道朋友来。
And I hope that, like the past, we can also bring truth-seeking friends to these family services.
让我们每个月我们等于都有布道会了，每一季也有布道会。
So that every month and every quarter we can have an evangelical service.
每个月都有家庭的这个布道，每一季都有季布道，半年有灵恩布道会。
So that we can have a monthly evangelical service, a quarterly evangelical service, and a spiritual convocation every half a year.
那我们平常我们慕道朋友来我们要有这个慕道班给他们上课。
And to also have a truth seeker class for the truth seeker friends that come to visit us.
那我们呢需要弟兄姐妹来关心。
We also need members to help show care for these people.
也许我们没有办法给他们上课。
And maybe we are unable to hold classes for them.
但是我们可以关心他们。
But we can still show our care for them.
这个关心比给他们上课有时候带来的这个果效还更大。
Because sometimes showing care surpasses any classes that we can ever hold.
这些都是希望我们弟兄姐妹我们放在祷告里头。
So I hope that we can keep all of these things in our prayers.
那当然还有我们的快乐了。
As well as our choir.
这个布道会如果没有诗班总是怪怪的。
Because if there is no choir for our evangelical services, it will be strange.
所以我们真的有很多事情要做。
So we have a lot of things that we can do.
那如果我们发现我们在服事当中神的同在，神的同工。
And if in the process of our servitude we experience the abidance and the help of God.
当我们尝到得人如鱼的感觉的时候。
When we taste what it is like to be fishers of men.
我们就会上瘾的。
Then it is something that we will become attracted and addicted to.
你就很喜欢传福音。
And then our love for preaching will develop.
那我们希望我们都能够得人如鱼。
So I hope we can all be fishers of men.
我们现在就一起来做感谢的祷告。
So with that, now we will kneel down and pray.
奉主耶稣圣名祷告。 Launch out into the deep, on the shore I go. Launch out in the ocean divine, out where the full tides flow. Launch out into the deep, on the shore I go. Launch out in the ocean divine, out where the full tides flow. Amen. 我们负责人还有没有要补充报告？
We have announcements.
跟主耶稣圣名做简短报告。
In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, we make our brief announcements.
那我们下星期一，我们星期一下午1点钟会去探访陈丁姐妹。
Next Monday at around 1 p.m., we will visit Sister
陈丁，
Chen Ding.
如果愿意加入我们，请跟组会联系。
If you want to join us, then please contact the council.
我们等一下报告结束就马上进行清扫工作。
So after our announcements, we will start our cleaning,
诗班练唱3点半开始。
and the choir will start practicing at 3:30.
请大家如果可以的话，留下来参加诗班练唱。
If you can, please stay for the choir practice.
报告到此，愿大家平安。